I have to tell you, not that I'm in any way proud of it, but I had my doubts about the hoopla before the things actually came together. So I'm not as surprised as you might imagine I would be.
Well, I don't, we don't even have I'm hoping that no one who watches this show is actually surprised by the following things: that Donald Trump is saying that he won, even though there's no actual count. These are typical strongman techniques that we see. Am I right, Professor Wolff?
Absolutely. This is, you got to give him points for consistency. He makes it up as he goes along in every situation. If there's some way to use it to advance his objective, well, then he does. He doesn't worry about whether it's true or not. He doesn't worry about whether 10 minutes later the facts will emerge that make it look like he's a liar. That's a different style of politics. And it is working really well in the United States, far better than most people would have expected. And I think the answer is, and the reason for it, is that people are desperate. And when you are desperate, you grab on to whatever there is. Mm-hmm. If we are in a society, which I believe is the case, that is in an advanced state of decline, that our capitalist system isn't working for the vast majority of people, and they live that reality every day in the supermarket, on the job, at home, when they go to the bank and see how much is left in their account and all the rest. You want somebody to get you out of this sinking ship. And what Biden and Harris offered was the same old, same old. They're part of the establishment. They have been all their political lives. They've never deviated in a major way from whatever the establishment there wanted. And people figured that out. And Mr. Trump is a noisy, blustery pretender. He promises to make us all great again, and it's all good, and he's winning everything. And if you're with him, you'll win. Look, it's thin, it's not very persuasive, but it is something. And there's an old rule in politics. You don't beat nothing with something. You don't beat something with nothing. You have to have something that is exciting, that is a plausible. No guarantees are required.
I think in this election, the something was like, not this. That was the only something that he offered. And, as we continue to vote for every vote to be counted here, I'd like to, I'm so glad you were here. When I looked at the schedule and I saw that you were just regularly scheduled to be on this day, and it happened to be the day after the election, I thought that this would be an excellent time to talk about the intersection between capitalism and late stage capitalism as we are living through, and electoral politics. The nation came out in record numbers. Can you talk more about what you think is energizing the electorate to come out?
I think it's the same thing I said before. They are aware, the American people are aware that things are falling apart, that the old realities that they thought they could count on are not. Record numbers of people are moving their residence for all kinds of reasons. Record numbers of people are giving up on jobs they thought would take care of them for their lives. Everywhere you turn, the dominance of the old ways and of the United States within the world is shrinking. And Mr. Trump, who pretends that none of this is a problem, he hasn't convinced Americans of that. They're desperate. That's why they went out in large numbers. They didn't change their votes all that much. They went out in large numbers because they're getting more and more anxious, and rightly so, about their situation. I mean, for me, as an economist looking at this, I'm stunned again by how little the American people have been educated and trained over decades. And by the way, the responsibility for this is shared between the two parties, is shared especially by the universities and the mainstream media. They have colluded, and there's no other way to put it, in a kind of refusal to face hard realities that then require tough decisions. They talk like that, but they evade it as their major. So let me give you 2 examples. The first one is now about 40 years old, so there's really no excuse. Over the last 40 years, one country in the world has been systematically more successful in growing its economy than any other place on the planet. And that country is the People's Republic of China. I am not asking anyone to endorse them or to like them or to agree with many of the things they do. I don't, that's fine. But you can't use your disagreement with this or that aspect of a society to pretend that something isn't happening that is fundamental. The dominant economic growth story in the world is China. The proof of it is that virtually 2/3 of America's major corporations have figured that out and have moved their activities to China. Pepsi-Cola sells more drinks in China than it does in the US. General Motors sells more cars in China than in the US. And I could go on and on. This is the reality. Right now, in the global pandemic, the Chinese economy is growing and ours is shrinking. And that's true for Europe too.
Richard, why are they doing so well?
Because they have an economic system that's different from ours. They give an enormous respect and deference to the central government. It's the job of the government to mobilize both private, because they have a huge private capitalist sector, to mobilize the resources of that private sector together with the government's resources in order to deal with whatever is an urgent problem. They thought it was an urgent problem to develop their economy. They mobilized all their resources and they did it really well. You know what else they decided to mobilize against or for? COVID-19. And that's why they've done so much better in managing that than we have. Wherever they turn, their system, and again, I am not endorsing it or anything, but you have to face when they decide we're going to focus on this, they mobilize and bring together their resources. We don't. We have half of our people wanting to believe there's no need to wear a mask rather than worrying about how to get masks to everybody who needs them.
The Washington Post reported that the exit polls show that the propaganda has taken hold and that a good percent of Trump voters really believe that we have to choose between dealing with the pandemic or having a decent economy. My understanding is that we could deal with the pandemic and actually help the economy. How do we counter this narrative, and what's the reality here?
Well, the reality is, again, I don't know why I'm focusing on it. It's just one issue. But I'm going to take China again. China has a much better record than we do. It's a country that has 4 times the number of people we do and a tiny fraction of the number of COVID deaths that we do. I mean, wildly different. And they are doing better economically. They will have economic growth in the year 2020. We will have economic decline. So the notion that you have to choose, that's not a theoretical argument. I mean, in this country it is. But that argument has been settled around the world because that's why every other country is fighting the virus more aggressively than we are, because they've figured out that the economic and the public health are necessary for each other. You don't choose between them, since it's hardly good to have a job for a person who's dead. They don't need it anymore. Yes. You know, there's something unspeakably grotesque in what's going on. I understand that capitalists in this country and in other countries, they want people to come to work, because without your labor force, you don't make any profits. And if you understand capitalism, that's what it is. It's a system about profits. So they want people to go to work. And since they know that there are millions of us unemployed, if those that they hire get sick, they know where they can get replacements. And if that sounds ugly, good, because it is. For them, they don't want their profits to get lost. But for the population as a whole, for the economy as a whole, this is craziness. You have to have public health, or else you're not going to make it in any economic venture